I have always believed that some things are better left unknown, but life doesn't always give us that choice. Sometimes, secrets found their way to you, whether you want them or not. It all started 2 months ago. My name is Linda, and I live in the same compound as my older brother Daniel and his wife Sandra. Our houses are separate, but we share the same compound. I never imagined I would be caught in a situation like this. Sandra has always been a quiet and reserved woman. She never really had many friends, and she didn't talk much. But lately, I started noticing changes in her behavior. She was always glowing, smiling to herself, and humming songs. At first, I thought she was just happy about something. Maybe she was expecting a baby. But then, I noticed something strange. She never seemed excited around my brother Daniel. Whenever he was around, she would force a smile. But the moment he left, her smile would return. It was almost as if she was living two lives. One evening, while I was outside watering the flower, I saw Sandra standing by the gate. She was on the phone whispering. I wasn't trying to listen, but her voice was shaking, and I couldn't help but hear some of her words. I miss you. I can't wait to see you tonight, she said in a soft voice. My heart skipped. I froze. Who was she talking to? It couldn't be my brother. He was inside watching football. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something felt off. Over the next few weeks, I started paying more attention. Sandra was always sneaking out in the evening, always returning late at night. But the thing that scared me the most was her growing stomach. She was pregnant, and she hadn't told anyone yet. One evening, when she thought no one was watching, she stood in front of the mirror, holding her belly, smiling. He is going to be so happy, she whispered to herself. Who was he? That night, I barely slept. Something told me I had to find out the truth. The night that changed everything. One Friday evening, Daniel was out of town for work. Sandra left the house again, but this time, I decided to follow her. She walked to a nearby street, then stopped near a black car parked by the roadside. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw who stepped out. It was Michael, my brother's best friend, my sister's brother-in-law, Daniel's younger brother. I felt sick. My knees were shaking. I hid behind a tree and watched as Sandra rushed into his arms. He held her so tight, kissed her forehead, and then touched her belly. He whispered, I can't wait to meet our baby. My heart almost stopped. So this was the truth. Sandra was pregnant, but not for my brother. She was carrying Michael's baby. They stood there, talking in low voices. I don't love Daniel anymore, Sandra said. I only married him because of family pressure. But with you, I feel alive. Michael sighed. I know, but he's my brother. How do we tell him? He will hurt me forever. Sandra held his face. We don't have to tell him now. I just want to be with you. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run to my brother and tell him everything. But something stopped me. The way they looked at each other wasn't fake. They were deeply in love. But love or not, this was a disaster waiting to happen. I ran back home, my heart racing. That night, I didn't know what to do. Should I tell Daniel? Should I confront Sandra? Should I stay out of it? But fate didn't wait for me to decide. A few weeks later, Daniel finally found out Sandra was pregnant. He was the happiest man alive. He started buying baby things, calling family members, and planning a small celebration. He believed it was his child. I felt sick every time I saw him smiling. On the day of the baby shower, something happened that changed everything. Hi besties, welcome to African Moonlight Folktale by Ozzy. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel if you've not done so by now. Welcome back. Michael came. I watched him closely. He looked nervous. His eyes kept following Sandra. I knew what he was thinking. This was his child, but he couldn't say a word. Then something shocking happened. Sandra's phone was on the table. A message popped up. I don't know what pushed Daniel to check it, but he did. The moment he saw it, his face changed. His hand started shaking. The message was from Michael. I can't wait to hold our baby in my arms. Silence filled the room. I held my breath. Sandra turned pale. Michael looked like he wanted to disappear. Daniel stood up slowly, staring at them. What? What is this? His voice was low, but I could hear the storm behind it. Sandra opened her mouth, but no words came out. Michael tried to speak. Daniel, But before he could finish, Daniel punched him so hard that he fell back. The room turned into chaos. People started screaming, trying to separate them. But Daniel was like a man possessed. You betrayed me. He screamed at Sandra. You both betrayed me. Sandra started crying. Daniel, I never loved you. I only married you because of family pressure. I love Michael. That was the final straw. Daniel turned and walked out of the house, slamming the door behind him. The family fell apart that night. Sandra and Michael left town the next day. Nobody knows where they went. Daniel refused to speak about it ever again. He changed. He became a different man. And me? I wish I never knew the truth. Because sometimes Knowing a secret is worse than living a lie. The day that followed were filled with silence. Our once happy family was now broken beyond repair. My brother, Daniel, barely spoke. He went to work early and came home late. He stopped eating properly. He stopped smiling. He became a ghost of himself. I tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't let me. The betrayer has scattered him, his own wife, his own brother. It was too much for him to handle. One night, I found him sitting outside in the dark, staring at nothing. Daniel, please talk to me, I begged. He finally looked at me, his eyes red. How do I move on from this, Linda? How do I forget that the woman I loved, no, the woman I married, was never mine? His voice was broken, filled with pain. I had no answer. Sandra and Michael were gone, just like that. The house next door, which used to be filled with laughter, was now silent and empty. Sandra had left behind some of her clothes, some of her belongings, but she didn't care. She had walked away from everything. When the rest of the family found out, it was a nightmare. My mother collapsed when she heard the news. My father sat in silence for hours, shaking his head. This is a disgrace, he kept saying. A shame to this family. Michael's own parents refused to speak to him. They cut him off. You are dead to us, my father said over the phone. We don't have a son like you. As for Sandra, her family was just as disappointed. Her mother called Daniel to apologize, crying over the phone. We didn't raise her like that, she sobbed. But an apology wouldn't fix anything. Daniel refused to forgive. Months, months passed. Life moved on, but not for Daniel. One evening, I heard a loud voice from his room. I ran inside and saw something that scared me to death. He had broken the mirror. Blood dripped from his fist. Daniel, I screamed, rushing to him. But he just stared at his bleeding hand. I feel nothing, Linda, he whispered. Nothing at all. I forced him to the hospital. He got stitches. But the real wound wasn't on his hand, it was inside him. The man who once loved deeply had turned into a man who felt nothing. Just when I thought the nightmare was over, Sandra came back. 8 months had passed since she left. She showed up at our house, holding a baby in her arms. I couldn't believe my eyes. She looked different, tired, tinier, and not as radiant as before. But there she was, standing at the door with a child. I felt my stomach twist. Why was she here? Dene had just come back from work. The moment he saw her, his whole body froze. His eyes went straight to the baby. Sandra spoke softly. Daniel, can we talk? I was expecting him to shout, to slam the door in her face. But he didn't. He just stood there, staring at the child. For a moment, the world stood still. Then, without a word, he turned around and walked away, leaving the door open behind him. Sandra stepped inside. And just like that, the past came back to haunt us again. Sandra stepped inside, holding the baby close to her chest. She looked nervous, almost like she regretted coming. I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to grab her and throw her out of the house. But another part of me wanted to hear what she had to say. The baby, a tiny boy with soft brown skin and Michael's exact eyes, whimpered in her arms. That sight made my stomach turn. Daniel had gone into his room. He didn't slam the door. He didn't scream. He just walked away, as if he couldn't stand the sight of her. Sandra's lips trembled as she looked at me. Linda, can I talk to him? I crossed my arms. Why are you here? She sighed, looking down at the baby. I had nowhere else to go. That made me laugh. Nowhere else to go? After she betrayed my brother, after she ruined his life, she wanted to come back? I shook my head. Leave, Sandra. You made your choice. Her eyes filled with tears. Please, just let me talk to him. I was about to say no when Daniel's voice came from behind me. Let her talk. I turned around, shocked. He was standing at the doorway, his voice completely blank. No anger, no sadness, just empty. Sandra swallowed hard. Daniel, Not here. He cut her off. Outside. Without waiting for her, he walked out to the veranda. Sandra followed, clutching the baby as she stepped outside. I wanted to hear, but something told me this was between them. I stood by the window, watching as they talked. Sandra was crying, pleading. Daniel just stood there listening. Then, after what felt like forever, he turned his back on her and walked away again. Sandra stayed outside for a long time before finally leaving. She didn't come back. A week after Sandra's visit, Daniel received a letter in the mail. No sender, no return address. I found him sitting at the table, holding the letter in his hands, staring at it like he had seen a ghost. What is it? I asked. He slid the paper across the table. I picked it up and started reading. It was from Sandra. Daniel, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I know I hurt you in ways that can never be fixed. But I need you to know that I regret everything. Not the baby. I love my son. But the way things happened, the way I betrayed you, I will carry that shame forever. Michael left me. He abandoned us when things got hard. He said he wasn't ready to be a father. I thought we had something real. But maybe it was just an illusion. I was stupid. I was selfish. I broke your heart for someone who didn't even stay. I don't deserve your kindness, and I won't bother you again. I just wanted you to know the truth. Michael was never the man I thought he was. And you were a better man than I ever deserved. Goodbye, Daniel. Sandra. I finished reading and looked at Daniel. He was still staring at the letter, unmoving. For the first time in months, I saw something in his eyes. Not anger, not pain. Relieved. He folded the letter, stood up, and walked to the kitchen. He lighted a match and held it to the paper. As the flame swallowed Sandra's words, I saw his lips moved ever so slightly. Goodbye, Sandra. And just like that, he let her go. Moving forward, Sandra never came back. Michael disappeared, ashamed to face his family. As for Daniel, he slowly started healing. It took time, but one day, he smiled again. Not because he had forgotten, but because he had survived. And in the end, that was enough. You don't know what you have until you lose it. Betrayal has consequences. Sandra and Michael's actions destroyed relationships and caused lasting pain. Betrayal doesn't just hurt one person, it shatters families and trust. Sandra thought she had found love in Michael, but it turned out to be an illusion. She lost a good man, Daniel, for someone who didn't even stay. Choices made in the heat of the moment can have lifelong consequences. Daniel didn't forgive Sandra to take her back. He forgave her to free himself. Letting go of pain is sometimes the only way to truly move forward. Michael lost not just his brother, but his entire family because of his selfish actions. When you betray the people who love you, you risk losing them forever. Sandra and Michael thought they were in love, but in the end, they both suffered the consequences of their choices. Life has a way of making people reap what they sow. Daniel went through deep pain, but in the end, he found peace. No matter how much betrayal or heartbreak you experience, you can heal and find happiness again. This story is a strong reminder that our actions have consequences, and the choices we make today can shape our entire future. Thank you for watching this story. What moral lesson did you learn from this story? Please drop it in the comment section. Share this story to someone who might be interested. Give this story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye.